Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jo, and welcome to episode 7 of the Society of Unpublished Authors.
This podcast is recorded in Western Sydney on the lands of the Darug people. We pay our respects to the original custodians and storytellers of this land and to the elders past and present.
When we think about writers, we usually think about someone alone in a room writing by themselves, but co-writing is actually more common than you might think, and that's what this episode's all about. We're going to explore some ideas about co-writing. We have a very special guest coming up in the podcast as well. In the Australian Kidlit community, there's many people that co-write. We've got some really successful collaborators. We've got Emily Gale and Nova Weetman who write in the middle grade space. We've got Amy Kaufiman who writes with Megan Spooner and Jay Kristoff. They write in the YA and the middle grade space. And for those books, they have both names on the cover of the book, so we know exactly who is writing them. And then we also have this other interesting idea where co-writers will come up with a whole new name, and we don't often realise that there are actually co-writers involved in this. And one example of this is the Maddy books, and there's so many different series. Probably the most popular one is the Dragon Girl series, and the Maddy name is actually two people. It's Hilary Rogers and Meredith Badger. And Sarah, there's also an adult co-writing team as well that you know of, isn't there?
Yes, I believe Christina Lauren is also a collaboration.
Oh, between Christina Hobb, is it? Christina Hobb and Lauren Billing, I think. Is that the one? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and they're a really well-known adult co-writing team, but if you didn't know, you just wouldn't know.
No, I did actually see it on the shelf and thought that it was interesting that their name was two first names. I didn't realise it actually was two first names co-writing.
It's such an intriguing concept, this co-writing thing, and it's something that's intrigued us and something we've had a bit of a go at. And we are so lucky and so fortunate that we've been able to snag our very first author interview with one of the most prolific Australian co-writers, which is
Kate Temple. So you may know Kate and Joel Temple for their series, the Bin Chicken series, The Goat, The Underdogs. There are so many to list. I couldn't even go through them all. And then they also have some on their own that they've each written. We were really lucky to interview Kate, and she shared so much amazing advice about co-writing.
And an interesting thing about them as well is that they are a married couple. I just cannot even imagine how this would work, but it works so well for them. And as you'll hear in the interview, there's just so many benefits for them in co-writing. Shall we check it out?
Yeah, amazing. Let's go.
All right. Well, Kate Temple, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the episode all about co-writing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we thought there's nobody better to get on than you, seeing as you are one of the most prolific co-writers in Australia. You're one half of the co-writing team with Joel. Do you want to let people know, just in case they don't know, who it is that you co-write with?
Yeah. Well, Joel and I write a lot of books together. We write picture books, we write graphic novels, and we write chapter books. And sometimes we mostly co-write, but we sometimes Joel draws them as well.
Awesome. And we read a quote the other day that said that co-writing is double the fun and half the work. What do you think about that?
Oh, I don't know about that. Does that person do any co-writing?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Look, on a good day it might be. That's true. I mean, the advantage of co-writing is certainly that you have someone to shoulder the load with. That's really true. But it's you also have access to someone else's ideas that would not necessarily be the things you would come up with, and so that can be really stimulating to work with ideas other than the ones that are kind of native to your own mind. I think it's still really difficult. I'm thinking right now I'm writing a Bin Chicken book today just before we started talking, and Joel had written a draft of it, and this often happens on our Bin Chicken picture books more so than anything else. We do a lot of, he's written one and then I was like, I had a different idea about that, and then I've written one, and sometimes that could actually be way more labor intensive.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating idea, that how it actually works. You know, traditionally, like the author illustrator, you can kind of understand how that works because one's doing this, one's doing that, but you guys are both doing the words.
Yeah, we're both doing the words, but we do it differently depending on books. Like, we don't have a set way of doing it. I know people like the Maddy Mara team, they've got a really tight ship, and they are much more organized, I think, than we are. But I find that some of our books have their own way of working, so that's not uncommon for us on a picture book that I might have done a draft, Joel might have done a draft. And if you were writing it by yourself, you probably wouldn't do such different kinds of drafts. You'd be building off something you have already written. But the advantage in doing that, even though it's quite labor intensive, is that there'll be things that Joel's written that I will put in, or vice versa. So we'll end up with something really good. But then longer stuff, like the Underdog series, which is about 8,000 words, those will be written really differently. There'll be someone, probably, I don't even know who's written which part of those, because a lot of it's just organically back and forth.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
All the good jokes are mine, though.
When you are starting a new project, do you schedule time for writing together, or is it more organic? One has an idea and will start it and then bring it back and forth. How does that work for you two?
I wish that was the case, but our lives are really, really busy. Just being parents, and with the school visits and also writing. So we just don't have the luxury of doing that. And so I think what happens is a lot of working out of necessity, and working on projects in the way that the project demands. So I think probably the most regular thing we do is walk and talk. So that'll be solving a lot of problems. And we often do that in the morning. We'll often go for an hour long walk and talk about all of those things, and then go off and do what we talked about.
You don't necessarily schedule like planning time. It's like more organic, as you said, in and around.
Yeah, look, it is more organic, and that's just because we're in a really busy phase of life, and sometimes things are reactive too. You'll get an edit that will come in from an editor, because we have a lot of books on the go at once. So suddenly you think, oh, I've got this whole week free, and I'm really going to get into this story, and I'm going to spend some time with it. And then an edit drops, and you think, oh, I could do that later, but I sort of got to get it done now so that I can clear the deck. So there is a little bit of reactivity to the way we work.
And is there one of you that's more like sort of the organizer, or do you share? Like, I'm just thinking, like, is there like a head chef kind of thing with the organization, or do you both sort of do that?
In terms of book organization, it's just that the books they all have their own personality and their own style of needing to be organized. So something like Mega Rich Guinea Pigs, where that was a bit different because Joel illustrated the book, but I wrote the book. But although I wrote the book, I didn't write it really alone, because we talked about all the ideas, and when I was in a plot hole we were solving that. So although he didn't type any of the words, it was still it would be hard not to. He was so involved in the writing that it's hard not to credit that. And I know we don't do that in the literary space, but there's plenty of other creative fields where that would be considered co-writing.
Yeah.
And so it's got my tone of voice, and all of that literary tone is from me, but the problem solving, the plots, all of that sort of stuff is definitely shared. So a book like that is done in that way, and then another book might have a completely different weighting to it. So it really depends what kind of book we need to do at the time.
Yeah. So you mentioned like voice and tone. So for the ones that you do co-write together, do you find it hard to keep like a consistent voice or a consistent tone, or do you think you just write in a very similar kind of way?
Well, look, I met Joel when we were both copywriters in ad agencies. We're both staff writers, and one of the things that job teaches you, and I did that job when I was in my 20s, is to write to a brief. And I think that was a very, very good training, because it taught me to think about what was required, what was the tone that was required, and that's very important with children's writing because it is the audience is essential to keep in mind. So thinking about them and what they need do they understand? Is the comprehension there? What age group exactly is this book for? Those kinds of things, I think if you know the reader and you have the reader in mind, and we always know, oh, this book will be, maybe even name that person, it might be a kid that we know or a nephew or niece we have, like that's who this book is for. Then I think if if you've got a shared idea of who that book is for, it really, really helps.
So you said you used to work together in advertising. We've got a copy of your very first book,
Wow, they're so rare. Parrot Carrot. Look, I'm in my studio at the moment. I've got a Parrot Carrot too.
Oh, there you
But
go.
you can't get them anymore. They don't
Yeah.
for some wild reason they don't
Yeah,
print
it's a
them
shame.
anymore.
It's such a clever book. This was weeded out of a library that I worked in about 5 years ago. So I think it broke some record for number of loans that it had. It had some, and it just got destroyed. But like going back to the origin, if this is your first book, yeah?
Yeah, it
Like
is.
how did you decide you're going to write a book together? And this book has so few words. Like how did you decide to write a book together? And then you only gave it so few words.
Yeah, well, this was I think this is probably says a lot actually about the beginnings. Parrot Carrot says a lot about the beginnings of our writing because it's a concept, it's an
Mm-hmm.
idea. It's more than a book, and I think that was our way in is thinking about picture books as concepts and ideas rather than a piece of, rather than a literary piece, like the expression of an idea that's both visual and uses words
Yep.
and all those
Yep.
kinds of things. And that was coming from our background, having worked in commercial art where it's all about concepts.
Mm-hmm.
And so this particular one came when we had really little children, babies, and Joel would put our eldest to sleep, amuse him by making up animals that sounded like other animals. And I think a lot of people find when they have kids that there's this whole other part of your brain that opens up. Sometimes your brain goes the other way and just shuts down. But for those of us who've had enough sleep, it opens up, and there are some interesting connections that are made. And this was sort of one of those things of being inspired in that stage of life of having kids and amusing kids and being at your wit's end to kind of come up with something out of nothing.
Yep. Sarah's in that phase now. She's got small children. And have
Yes,
you
and my
found
toddler.
oh, sorry.
Oh,
No, go.
sorry. My toddler is the biggest fan of the Bin Chicken books. He's definitely a lover of like villains. He loves Swiper in Dora. He loves the craziest characters with the craziest backstories. And he is just one with the Bin Chicken. He thinks they're so cheeky and naughty. So that is actually a book that we read a lot. So I see your name a lot. I read your words a lot.
Oh, that's so exciting. I'm glad he likes it.
Okay, so for Sarah and I, we've been dabbling with a bit of co-writing. We've tried a couple of different ways. We've tried sitting across the desk, very studiously going, let's write. We've tried butcher's paper on the wall. We've tried Google Drives and Docs and everything. Have you got any advice out there for people who have this idea that they might like to co-write something with someone?
Yeah, from my experience, my own personal experience, and also from talking to people who have done this successfully, thinking about Maddy Mara and Amy Kaufiman also writes with Megan Spooner and those kind of um, collaborations. And I can say this for us as well, when you have a strong personal relationship, when you can talk about an idea and you're just, the most important thing is the idea. You're not worried, oh, but that was my bit, or you did that bit, or it doesn't matter that someone had the funnier joke or that they wrote more pages. When you're not worried about that, and what you really just want is to create this great thing, I think that is the strongest thing that you can have. I also think being sometimes very rigid can be a problem, but that might not be for everyone. But it can be a problem because it starts to be obvious who's written more, who's done more, who came up with more, and all that kind of stuff. Because sometimes your collaborators' skills aren't necessarily in the quantity, you know. I know that I'll have books with Joel where he's come up with an excellent idea and maybe I've written more of it, but I wouldn't have written it if there wasn't that idea. So how you weigh up what's more important is, yeah, I think the most important thing is that connection and your relationship and your friendship. And in doing that, that sort of preserves the idea.
Yep, yep. What do you think about that, Sarah?
Yeah, I think that's good advice. We found that the busier the environment was, the less we could kind of nitpick each other or nitpick each sentence, and it kind of flowed a bit better when it was more organic how our relationship is, how our usual conversations are. Because usually we're
Mm,
not talking over Google Doc or we're not talking and
Mm.
writing in a notebook. We're more throwing things out there. The kids are running around. It's
yeah.
that kind of
And
vibe.
And sometimes it's nice to be structured in the sense that you might go, okay, I'm doing, you know, you've plotted it out really loosely in your conversations. And then you go, okay, well, we've got our structure. And, you know, someone does chapter one, however long that
Mhm.
takes. And then the next person who's on chapter two, it can kind of be a gift. You know, you wake up the next day and it's like, wow, the book
Yeah.
fairy just put a chapter
Half
down.
the work.
Yeah.
Double the fun, half the work.
Yeah.
And do you ever find yourself sort of splitting off and following two ideas and then seeing which one eventuates, or do you try and make decisions as you kind of go?
No, that never happens. We never find that we're kind of, oh, this is split in two different ways. I
Mm-hmm.
imagined it like this, you imagined it like that. That hasn't
Yep.
ever happened
Right.
because we're trying to get to the same place.
Yep.
The We've had times where I have things that I want to write that Joel wouldn't write, like the Trilby Moffat
Yep.
series. You know, there's just not books that he would write. They're books that he loves reading, but he would never write that. So that's something. And in his Ludicrous Legends books, that you know, they're so Joel. I would never write those. So
Yep.
I think now we're at a stage where there are things that we are writing separately to enjoy those kind of divergences that we have, but the bulk of our books will be written together.
Yep. Yep. And your school visits too are a big part of your life, obviously. And I think there would be nothing better than going to a school visit with someone else to do it with you,
It's
because
so
you've
much
just
more
got to be
fun.
on. Yeah. Yeah.
It is so much more fun. I have done a few for various reasons, like when I was promoting Trilby. And look, that you know, they're great too. I enjoy meeting kids. I think it's a really important part of being a children's author, particularly as our kids got older. How else would I keep my ear in and stay in touch with what kids are doing and thinking?
Yep.
So I've seen it for the value that it has, but that doesn't mean it's not hard. And doing it alone is much more difficult. And
Mm.
anyone who does it alone will say that. Like it can be difficult. I mean, you standing in front of 300-400 kids.
Yep.
That's a big job. It's just a really big job. And
Yeah.
doing
And you
it with
guys travel.
someone
Yeah.
is it
Mm.
so much more fun. You know,
Yep.
you have an off day and you forgot something, you know, there's someone to pick up the ball, and you know, there is an energy that just comes with that and a dynamic that's there. So yeah, we don't do school visits pretty much. Yeah, we don't do school visits separately
Yep.
at
Yep.
all. Um,
Yep.
and that's just because it's appropriate for the books that we've written, that we
Yep.
do them, that we share
Yep.
them like that.
Yeah. And if you're away from home, because I know you guys travel a bit as well, you're not going back to a hotel room by yourself. You've actually got someone to
Yeah.
have dinner with or talk to or whatever. Yeah.
That's right.
This
Yeah,
must be
otherwise you're
quite
on the
nice.
road a lot,
Yeah.
and yeah, no, it is. It's good.
Yeah.
Have you got any cautionary tales or any advice to kind of keep clear from when co-writing?
Well, I did have one very, very scary experience that was very particular to co-writing. When we first started, we were writing, this was our first longer form book, the Jimmy Cook Discovers Third Grade book. And it went on to be an honor book for the CBCA, but we'd written this book, and because it's written in diary entries, we really were able to chunk that up and share it. So, but Joel was working at that time in an agency, and so we'd opened a Google Doc, and he opened it with his work account, and we wrote the entire manuscript, and then he left that job, and that ceased to exist, the entire manuscript, and that was just the most terrifying. Luckily, Joel is a very nice person, and the IT guy was a friend of his, and he was able to get the IT guy to reinstate the email for him to. But if it wasn't for that, that book would not exist.
Oh
The
my
entire
goodness.
thing got erased.
That could
Be
have so gone
careful.
a very different way. Okay, Sarah, we need to remember that.
Basically,
Yes.
wouldn't have had a career because that book went on to be a CBCA on a book, which then made it possible to publish more books. So I basically would be working in a bank if that hadn't happened.
That's amazing. I love that story. I've listened to a lot of your interviews. I have never heard that story. That was a great story.
Well, you've asked very interesting questions.
Good. Well, that's about it for us. We really want to say thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Is there anything upcoming for you that you want to give a shout out to? Any more
Yeah,
books on the
sure, I
horizon?
will.
Yeah.
We've our brand new Mega Rich Guinea Pigs 2 is coming out shortly in a few weeks. It is. I'm calling it this. It's not a sequel. It's a squeakquel.
I love it.
I love that.
And is that your joke or Joel's? I listened to an old interview you did when your Frog Squad books came out, and you said that Joel was just like spitting out these frog jokes constantly.
Oh, it's got to be. Look, it's got to be Joel's because it's so bad and it's a pun, and all of those are always Joel's.
Love that. Love that. All right. Well, we'll look forward to that, and I'm sure Sarah's kids will also look forward to the next. Is there any more Bin Chicken books coming out?
Oh yeah, I'm working on one right now. When I get off this call, I've got to go back and pull apart Joel's words.
You need Bin Chicken at the preschool. You need Bin Chicken goes to preschool.
Oh, that's a good
Atticus
idea.
would be right. Yeah, he would love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've heard it.
You heard it here first. Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, thank you so much, Kate. We really, really
thanks, Sarah.
appreciate you talking to us. And stay tuned. You might see something Sarah and I have co-written.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
What was your standout from our interview with Kate Temple?
Oh, look, there was so much great information there. I think it's a shame we can't do the 1 hour walk and talk every morning. Sadly, we don't live in the same household, so that's a shame we're missing out on that. But there was a lot of things that we could apply to our own co-writing relationship. One is that she really emphasized having that strong personal relationship, which I think we do have, so I think we've got that going for us. And also something she said about the idea being the most important thing. If you've both sold on the idea, you both want to create the best thing you possibly can, there's no sort of competition of like, well, you wrote more words than I wrote, or, you know, you've done more than me, or that was my line, or anything like that. It's all about the idea and about the audience. So I thought that was really, really useful.
Yeah, she definitely emphasized that it's a team experience. Like it is, you are co-writing. It's not sending manuscripts back and forth in the mail for them. Like they really are in it together. And so that was really interesting.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I thought it was quite encouraging for you as a young mum to hear also that they found that having kids was something that opened up their brains and inspired them and gave them this new way to express their creativity. So I think that was awesome as well.
Yes, very encouraging. You do hear a lot of things about tired parents and about parents with no time. So it is nice to hear about the benefits.
Yeah, I love that.
While we are on the topic of co-writing, should we talk about a few weeks ago we had a crack at co-writing and we tried 2 different techniques. We sat after one of our podcasts and we had our pen and paper and we tried to write our book. It didn't go so well. We were a bit stumped, but then a few weeks later we sat downstairs, my kids were running around, we had butcher paper on the wall, and we wrote 90% of this story that we had been staring at blank paper the previous time.
Yeah, that definitely worked for us, didn't it? Having just a little bit of chaos and not having too sterile an environment. So I find that encouraging as well. Like if people are thinking, well, I just need to wait for my kids to grow up, or I need to wait till I have a room of my own and all those ideas, it's actually not necessary.
Yeah. And also we had people to bounce off as well. I know that my brother was there, so we kind of asked him a few times, or if the kids came past, we asked questions, and it was just more of a writer's room environment.
That's so interesting because as we were preparing for this podcast, I did actually go onto YouTube and tried to look up some clips about writers' rooms, because I know it's quite common in TV shows and movies that there is this team of writers. And I managed to find a clip of The Simpsons writers' room. Apparently it's very rare. They don't let people in there very often. But I just found that just such an interesting experience, just having that bouncing of ideas. And most of it's talking. There's not much writing. It's just a lot of talking and collaboration.
I feel like that is super insightful. I haven't seen any writers' rooms, but that is the fun part, the easy part, the talking and collaborating. The actually putting the pen to paper at the end is kind of the more disciplined part of it, but the actual collaborating is really fun.
I wonder if we could experiment with like audio, visual, and recording our actual words rather than trying to write them down. Maybe we'll try that.
You mean voice to text?
Yeah,
Oh.
or video,
Yeah, interesting.
It might work.
It might.
We've got nothing to lose.
True.
So we're feeling super inspired now that we've heard from Kate. And our challenge this week is going to be keep going with our co-written picture book manuscript that we have 90% written. Now, Sarah, we need to get to 100%.
Yes.
We're putting this out there as a challenge and as some accountability to finish that manuscript.
Definitely. I wonder if there's a new technique we can try to finish it.
Ooh, maybe we should try drawing as well, although neither of us are that good at drawing.
Yeah. That might be a little uninspiring.
Maybe like interpretive dance, mime.
Oh,
There's a whole lot of things
act it out.
Yeah, we haven't tried some of these things. Look, who knows what little thing that'll unlock in our brains.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, all right. So stay tuned for the interpretive dance, mime / audiovisual paper version of our manuscript. I'm excited.
Wow. Imagine that though, you're writing with someone and they're charadesing it out to you and you have to guess the word. I mean,
I love that idea. We are definitely doing that. Okay. Yep. All right. My mind's really ticking over now.
yeah. All right. Well, next time you hear from us, hopefully we have that manuscript finished.
And you can find the show notes to everything we've spoken about today on the societyofunpublishedauthors.com. And please follow along and let us know if you have any co-writing catastrophes or almost catastrophes like Kate did, or any successes.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.